Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. As he fought to stay conscious, he realized that the vial containing the antidote he'd been working on had shattered in the impact. With his vision blurring and his thoughts growing fuzzy, Ronan knew he had only moments to recreate the formula before he lost consciousness. Drawing on reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed, Ronan dragged himself to his feet. His hands, usually so steady, shook as he reached for the necessary components. But as he worked, he found himself tapping into a well of knowledge and skill that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his conscious mind. It was as if Leilani's body itself remembered the precise movements needed, the exact measurements required. In a blur of activity that he would later struggle to recall, Ronan managed to recreate the antidote and administer it to the poisoned scientist just before collapsing to the floor. Above deck, Leilani's actions had not only saved the research vessel, but had also de-escalated the entire situation. The aggressive maneuvers of the enemy submarines ceased, and within hours, diplomatic channels were buzzing with activity as nations scrambled to disavow knowledge of the attack and reaffirm their commitment to peaceful resolution. As the storm cleared and calm returned to the South China Sea, Leilani and Ronan found themselves hailed as heroes. Their actions had prevented an international incident, saved lives, and paved the way for a peaceful resolution to the territorial dispute. But as they received accolades and commendations, both twins were quietly grappling with a startling realization. In the heat of crisis, they had each displayed skills and knowledge that went beyond their training, abilities that seemed to be ingrained in the very bodies they now inhabited. Leilani's intuitive understanding of submarine warfare and Ronan's inexplicable medical insights could not be explained by their current backgrounds. It was as if some essence of their original selves had remained, hidden deep within their swapped bodies, emerging in moments of extreme need. As they lay recovering in the medical bay, Leilani nursing some minor injuries from the explosion, Ronan dealing with a concussion, they had a chance to discuss their experiences in hushed tones. It was like muscle memory, Leilani whispered, mindful of the other patients nearby. But not just physical. I knew things, understood concepts that I've never studied in this body. Ronan nodded, wincing slightly at the movement. Same here. When I was recreating that antidote, it was like my hands knew what to do before my brain did. Like some part of you was still in there, guiding me. They fell silent, contemplating the implications. The coins had done more than simply swap their bodies. They had somehow preserved core aspects of their original selves, hidden away but accessible in times of great need. Do you think, Leilani began hesitantly, do you think we'll eventually become fully integrated? That one day there won't be any distinction between our original selves and who we are now? Ronan considered this for a long moment. I don't know, he said finally, but I'm not sure it matters. We are who we are now, a combination of our original dreams and the lives we've built since the switch. Maybe that's the real magic of the coins. Not just to swap bodies, but to create something entirely new. Leilani reached out to squeeze her brother's hand, feeling a surge of affection and gratitude. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever further surprises their transformed bodies might hold, they would face them together. As they recovered and their ship made its way back to port, both Leilani and Ronan found themselves reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. From those first tentative dreams of lives that seemed out of reach, to the impossible magic of the coins, to the careers they had built and the lives they had saved, it had been an adventure beyond anything they could have imagined. The mystery of the coins and their origins remained unsolved, a tantalizing puzzle that they knew might never be fully unraveled. But as they stood on the deck of their ship, watching the coastline of home appear on the horizon, both felt a profound sense of peace and rightness. They had taken an incredible risk, defied the laws of nature and society to become their truest selves, And in doing so, they had not only fulfilled their own dreams, but had made a real difference in the world. As the ship docked and they prepared to disembark, Leilani turned to Ronan with a smile. "Ready for our next adventure?" she asked. Ronan grinned back, his eyes twinkling with the same mixture of mischief and determination that had led them to use the coins all those years ago. "Always," he replied, "as long as we're in it together." And with that, they stepped off the ship and into the next chapter of their extraordinary lives. Forever changed, but always, at their core, the same brave souls who had dared to dream of something more. The years that followed brought new challenges and triumphs for Leilani and Ronan. Their heroic actions in the South China Sea had catapulted them into the spotlight, bringing promotions and increased responsibilities. Leilani found herself assigned to increasingly sensitive and high-stakes submarine operations, her unique blend of technical expertise and intuitive understanding making her an invaluable asset in the ever-evolving landscape of naval warfare. Ronan, meanwhile, was tapped to lead a groundbreaking medical research program within the Navy, focusing on developing advanced treatments for injuries and illnesses encountered in combat situations. His experience with the mysterious poison in the South China Sea had sparked a passionate interest in unconventional medical approaches, and he threw himself into the work with characteristic dedication. But as their careers flourished, both twins found themselves grappling with unforeseen complications of their transformed lives. The lingering echoes of their original selves, which had emerged so dramatically during the crisis, continued to surface in unexpected ways. Leilani sometimes found herself overwhelmed by flashes of medical knowledge or an inexplicable urge to nurture and heal, remnants of Ronan's original nature asserting themselves at inopportune moments. Ronan, in turn, occasionally experienced surges of aggression or a compulsion to take charge in tactical situations, traits more aligned with Leilani's pre-switch personality. These moments of dissonance were jarring, forcing them to confront the complex nature of their new identities. Were they truly becoming integrated beings as they had hoped? Or were they destined to remain forever split, caught between two sets of instincts and memories? The situation came to a head during a joint training exercise with Allied forces. Leilani, now a senior officer, was overseeing a complex submarine maneuver when a crew member was suddenly injured in an equipment malfunction. Without thinking, she rushed to the fallen sailor's side, her hands moving with practiced ease as she assessed the injury and began administering first aid. It wasn't until she heard the gasps of surprise from the surrounding crew that she realized what she was doing. "Ma'am, I didn't know you had medical training," one of the junior officers said, his eyes wide with admiration. Leilani froze, her mind racing. She had no explanation for her actions. This body had never received formal medical training beyond basic first aid, yet she had just performed a complex field dressing with the skill of a seasoned combat medic. "I picked up a few things over the years," she mumbled, stepping back as the ship's actual medical team arrived. She caught the eye of her executive officer, noting the man's puzzled expression. This would require some explaining later. Meanwhile, on a naval base halfway across the world, Ronan was facing a crisis of his own. A routine training exercise had gone awry, with several recruits injured when a piece of equipment malfunctioned. As the base's chief medical officer, Ronan should have been focused solely on treating the wounded. Instead, he found himself seized by an overwhelming urge to take control of the situation beyond the medical aspects. His mind raced with tactical assessments, identifying potential security vulnerabilities that the accident might have exposed. Before he could stop himself, he was barking orders to secure the perimeter and conduct a full sweep of the base. The security team, caught off guard by the normally gentle doctor's sudden shift into command mode, hesitated for a moment before complying. Ronan's orders were sound, but completely outside his purview as a medical officer. As the situation stabilized and the injured were treated, Ronan retreated to his office, his hands shaking slightly as he poured himself a glass of water. What was happening to him? These weren't his instincts, his training. This was pure Leilani, the tactical mind that had dreamed of submarine command, emerging unbidden in a moment of crisis. That evening, the twins connected via a secure video call, their faces drawn with concern as they recounted their experiences. "It's getting worse," Leilani said, running a hand through her short-cropped hair, a gesture that belonged to Ronan, not to the body she now inhabited. "I'm afraid I'm going to slip up in a way I can't explain away. People are already asking questions." Ronan nodded, his long hair, now streaked with distinguished touches of gray, pulled back in a neat bun. "I know. Today, I nearly compromised my entire position by acting like you would have. It was as if I couldn't control it." They fell into a troubled silence, each lost in thought. Finally, Leilani spoke up, her voice hesitant. Do you think we made a mistake?" she asked softly. "Using the coins, I mean. Maybe we weren't meant to live like this, in bodies that aren't truly ours." Ronan's brow furrowed. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I can't bring myself to regret it even now. Look at all we've accomplished, the lives we've saved. Would that have been possible if we hadn't taken this risk?" Leilani nodded slowly. "You're right. But we can't go on like this. We need to find a way to fully integrate these aspects of ourselves or what?" Ronan prompted when she trailed off. Leilani took a deep breath. "Or we need to find a way to switch back." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Switching back would mean giving up the careers they'd built, the lives they'd created. It would mean starting over, potentially facing suspicion and disbelief from those who knew them. But it might also be the only way to resolve the increasing conflict within their minds and bodies. "The coins are inert," Ronan pointed out. "We have no idea how to reactivate them or if it's even possible. Then we need to find someone who does," Leilani said, a spark of determination igniting in her eyes. "Uncle Marcus, he gave us the coins in the first place. He must know more about their origins, their true capabilities." Ronan nodded slowly, the beginnings of a plan forming in his mind. "We'll need to take leave, come up with a cover story, and finding Uncle Marcus won't be easy. You know how he likes to disappear for years at a time." "We'll find him," Leilani said firmly. "We have to. Our careers, our lives, everything depends on it." As they hashed out the details of their plan, both twins felt a mixture of apprehension and excitement. This would be their greatest challenge yet, a quest not just to save others, but to save themselves. And as they signed off, promising to begin their preparations immediately, neither could shake the feeling that they were embarking on an adventure that would change their lives just as profoundly as the night they first used the coins. The next morning, Leilani and Ronan set their plan into motion. They each requested extended leave from their respective commands, citing family emergencies, a cover story close enough to the truth to be believable. Their exemplary records and years of dedicated service meant that their requests were granted with minimal questions asked. As they prepared for their search, they delved into old family records, looking for any clue that might lead them to Uncle Marcus. The man had always been elusive, popping in and out of their lives with little warning. But surely there had to be some pattern to his movements. Leilani pored over maps, plotting out the locations of Marcus's past appearances, looking for any geographical consistency. Ronan, meanwhile, dug into family history, searching for any mention of the coins or similar artifacts that might shed light on their origins. Their breakthrough came in the form of an old journal tucked away in a box of family heirlooms. It had belonged to their great-grandmother, and while most of the entries were mundane accounts of daily life, there was a section near the back that caught Ronan's eye. "Lay, come look at this!" he called out, his voice tight with excitement. Leilani hurried over, leaning over Ronan's shoulder to peer at the faded handwriting. "The Guardian returns when the moon is full and the tide is high," Ronan read aloud. "The meeting place is where the ancient stones touch the sea." They exchanged meaningful glances. "The Guardian," Leilani mused. Could that be referring to Uncle Marcus? Or someone like him? Ronan nodded slowly. It's possible, and where the ancient stones touch the sea, that sounds like it could be describing a specific location. They spent the next few hours cross-referencing the journal entry with maps and historical records. Finally, they narrowed down their search to a remote stretch of coastline in Scotland known for its Neolithic stone circles. "The next full moon is in 2 weeks," Leilani noted, checking her calendar. "If we're interpreting this correctly, that's when we need to be there." Ronan nodded, a mix of determination and apprehension on his face. "It's not much to go on, but it's the best lead we have." They spent the next few days making preparations for their journey. As they packed their bags and made travel arrangements, both twins found themselves reflecting on the enormity of what they were undertaking. "What if we can't find a way to fix this?" Leilani asked quietly as they sat in the airport, waiting for their flight. "What if we're stuck like this forever, always at war with ourselves?" Ronan reached out to squeeze her hand, a gesture of comfort that felt both familiar and strange in their swapped bodies. "Then we'll face it together, like we always have. But let's not give up hope yet. We've come this far. There has to be a solution." As their plane took off, carrying them across the ocean towards Scotland and the possibility of answers, both Leilani and Ronan felt a sense of trepidation, mixed with excitement. Whatever awaited them on that distant shore, they knew their lives would never be the same again. The flight to Scotland was long and tense, filled with nervous anticipation. Leilani found herself constantly fidgeting, her fingers tapping out complex sonar rhythms on the armrest, a habit she'd developed in her years of submarine service, but one that looked oddly out of place on Ronan's larger hands. Ronan, for his part, kept getting lost in medical journals, his mind automatically cataloging symptoms and treatments even as he tried to focus on their current mission. It was as if his body, Leilani's body, was determined to remind him of the life he'd built, the skills he'd honed over years of dedicated study and practice. As they touched down in Edinburgh and made their way to their rental car, both twins were acutely aware of the strangeness of their situation. They moved through the world as they had for years now, comfortable in their swapped identities, and yet increasingly aware of the discord between their outer appearances and their inner selves. The drive to the coast was beautiful, winding through rolling green hills and past ancient stone walls. But neither Leilani nor Ronan could fully appreciate the scenery, their minds too preoccupied with what lay ahead. They arrived at the small coastal village nearest to the stone circle late in the afternoon. The place was tiny, just a handful of cottages clustered around a single pub, with the ruins of an old church visible on a nearby hill. "Not much to go on," Leilani muttered as they checked into the only inn in town.
"How are we supposed to find Uncle Marcus in a place like this?"
Ronan shrugged, setting down their bags.
"We follow the clues. The journal mentioned the full moon and high tide. That's tomorrow night. For now, let's see what we can learn about the stone circle."
They spent the rest of the day exploring the village and its surroundings, talking to locals and trying to gather any information they could about the ancient stones. Most of the villagers were friendly but bemused by their interest, offering little beyond vague legends and tourist brochures. As the sun began to set, they made their way to the pub for dinner. The place was cozy and warm, filled with the low hum of conversation and the smell of hearty food. They found a quiet corner table and ordered, both picking at their meals as they discussed their next move.
"We should head out to the stones at sunset tomorrow,"
Leilani said, her voice low.
"That'll give us plenty of time to scout the area before moonrise."
Ronan nodded, then suddenly froze, his eyes fixed on a point over Leilani's shoulder.
"Don't turn around,"
he said softly. "But I think our search just got a lot easier." Leilani resisted the urge to spin in her seat, instead casually shifting her position to get a better view of the room. Her breath caught in her throat as she spotted a familiar figure seated at the bar. Uncle Marcus looked exactly as they remembered him. Salt and pepper beard, twinkling eyes, an air of mischief and mystery that seemed to follow him wherever he went. He was nursing a pint of ale and chatting amiably with the bartender, looking for all the world like he'd been a regular there for years. "What do we do?" Leilani whispered, her heart racing. "Do we approach him?" Ronan shook his head slightly. "Not yet. Let's wait and see what he does. If he's here for the reason we think he is, he'll make a move soon enough." They tried to act natural, picking at their food and maintaining a quiet conversation while keeping Marcus in their peripheral vision. After what felt like hours, but was probably only about 20 minutes, they saw him stand up, leave some money on the bar, and head for the door. Without a word, Leilani and Ronan stood to follow him. They stepped out into the cool night air just in time to see Marcus's figure disappearing around a corner at the end of the street. They followed at a discreet distance, their military training kicking in as they moved silently through the darkened village. Marcus led them on a winding path, past the old church and up a hill towards the coastline. As they crested the hill, they saw him, a solitary figure standing amidst a circle of ancient standing stones, his silhouette stark against the starry sky. The twins exchanged a glance, then slowly approached. Marcus didn't turn as they drew near, but his voice carried clearly on the night air. "I was wondering when you two would show up," he said, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Took you long enough to figure it out?" Leilani and Ronan stopped short, momentarily stunned. Then Leilani found her voice. "Uncle Marcus," she said, the deep timbre of Ronan's voice still strange to her ears even after all these years. "We need your help." Marcus turned to face them, his eyes twinkling in the starlight. "I know," he said simply. "That's why I'm here. The coins have served their purpose, but now it's time for the next phase of your journey." Ronan stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean, the next phase? Can you reverse what the coins did?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "Reverse? No, but evolve? That's a different story entirely." He reached into his pocket and pulled out two familiar objects, the coins that had changed their lives so dramatically years ago. "The magic of the coins is not about simple transformation," Marcus explained, his voice taking on a rhythmic, almost hypnotic quality. "It's about growth, about becoming who you were always meant to be. You've lived in each other's shoes, learned each other's strengths. Now it's time to truly become yourselves." He held out the coins, one to each of them. "Take them," he urged. "And this time, don't just swap, merge, become the best of both worlds." Leilani and Ronan hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. This wasn't what they had expected, wasn't the simple solution they had hoped for. But as they looked into each other's eyes, they saw the same realization dawning. This was right. This was the next step in their extraordinary journey. With trembling hands, they reached out and took the coins. As their fingers closed around the cool metal, they felt that familiar tingle of magic, but stronger now, more purposeful. "Together," Marcus instructed. "Bring the coins together and focus on who you truly are, not just the body you inhabit, but the person you've become, the blend of your original self and the life you've lived." Heart-pounding, Leilani and Ronan stepped closer to each other. They raised the coins, bringing them together with a soft clink. As the edges touched, a surge of energy pulsed through them, and the world around them seemed to blur and shift. Leilani felt as if she were being pulled apart and put back together, but this time it wasn't a simple swap. She could feel aspects of her original self merging with the strengths and experiences she'd gained in Ronan's body. Her mind expanded, encompassing both the tactical genius of her submarine training and the nurturing instincts of her original nature. Beside her, Ronan was undergoing a similar transformation. The medical knowledge he'd accumulated blended seamlessly with the decisiveness and leadership skills he'd developed in Leilani's body. He felt more whole, more complete than he had in years. As the energy faded and their vision cleared, they looked at each other in wonder. They were neither fully their original selves nor the people they had become after the swap. Instead, they were something new, integrated beings that combined the best of both worlds. Leilani looked down at her hands that were smaller than Ronin's had been, but stronger and more calloused than her original ones. She could feel the breadth of knowledge in her mind, the perfect blend of her submarine expertise and Ronin's medical skills. Ronin ran a hand through his hair, which now fell to his shoulders, longer than his original cut, but shorter than Leilani's had been. He felt the strength in his body, a combination of his sister's military training and his own medical precision. They turned to thank Uncle Marcus, but the old man was gone, vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared. The standing stones loomed around them, silent witnesses to their transformation. As the first light of dawn began to paint the sky, Leilani and Ronin embraced, marveling at how right it felt. Neither the awkwardness of inhabiting each other's bodies nor the distance of their original forms. "What now?" Ronin asked softly, his voice a perfect blend of his original timbre and the higher pitch he'd grown accustomed to. Leilani smiled, feeling a sense of peace and purpose she hadn't experienced in years. "Now," she said, "we go back and live our lives. Not as two people in the wrong bodies, but as the integrated, whole individuals we were always meant to be." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.